Yes, tools. Detailing tools, that is. Yes, I'm actually got into detailing the frames after my lengthy years of being in the cycle industry for over 30 plus. It's kind of like a latest passion of mine to kind of bring these beauties back to life as much as I can, considering whatever the use they've had experienced over the lifetime of the bike. So yeah, bike shops, we polish bikes. There's a rag and there's some polish of some sort that they use, right? Well, this is a purple power, that's a cleaner. But anyway, really the end of the day is they put a polish on there. It's nothing more extravagant than just a cleaning kind of polishing solution to make it look nice, which is fine. But for detailing, restoration, also, refurbishing, where is my niche? I'm trying to bring these bikes up to almost close to showroom quality as I can. From the cleaning the drivetrain to trimming and polishing the wheels, armor alling the tires, detailing the frames. In this segment, I'm going to go over the detailing and what I use, the tools I use in more detail. I have other videos of detailing on specific bikes as well as the tools themselves, so you're more welcome to check those out and see with those various ones. Each paint is going to be different. That's one thing to keep in mind. So,
welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles.
welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin, the guy. Obviously, I have a garage shop. Taking scary how to use bikes one bike at a time.
If you like these videos, please like and subscribe.
So the tools I use, going right into it, I've picked up a couple of Dremel tools, and there's a couple of professional high-end, smaller disc polishing tools out there. Milwaukee has one, and as well as Adams polishes too, but they're quite pricey. These have actually kind of landed on because I was like rolling through Lowe's and like, that will work, and it was like a fifth of the cost. I mean, they're under like around 50 or 60 bucks or something like that, and it has a whole kit with different buffing pads and so forth too. So I bought one, this one, or which one, doesn't matter, and I just used it to clean. I was like, the battery life doesn't sustain the whole duration of cleaning the frame sometimes, so that's why I picked up a second one. So I can alternate it back and forth to get through one frame, so I don't have to wait for one of these guys to charge up, because my process has become just as, from the beginning of just throwing on a polisher or a cleaner than a de-scratcher, which I used to use from New Finish, and it worked really well, the Scratch Doctor. That usually covered up a lot of the scratches and so forth, and I'd finish with the New Finish. This is where I started. Then I'd use this with like a wet, damp rag. I think is the directions you use, and you wipe it off, and you wipe it on, then you wipe it off. Wax on, wax off. And for those who remember that movie. Anyway, comment below if you do. It's a little different story on this, and we're not in any kind of duels, so whatever. But this is where I started off with. So I used the scratch to get kind of like all those little scratches and so forth. And this I only used with rags. I didn't get into the polishing ones. And what kind of blew my mind is when my truck got hit by a log on the highway, I had to take my car in to be fixed. And a buddy of mine locally, he does detail and dent work, dent vision, I think it's called. And what he does, he fixes dents. We have hail out here in Colorado, so it's a pretty big thing. But he also would take out scratches and does detailing on vehicles. Well, he's like, hey, I know you do bikes. You got to check this stuff out. And I'm like, all right. So he gave me a couple of samples, and he was like, this is what I use, a pad and a disc. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's where I got into, slowly getting into it. It was a slow process. But I started with these guys, which worked really well. Then I progressed. And I tried different things like goof off this stuff here to get like the gummy stuff off and so forth. That worked okay. And Armor All that I'd buy in a big jug when I refill this one. And I still use that for tires and rims. It's just a little bit easier to apply. Because it's a liquid onto a rag, and I can really kind of dig into those little nicks and crannies of the wheel. Well, if another video of wheel washing, and that's where the real true trick is. Tips and tricks is pre-washing. I use a rag, a regular grungy rag, and I use diluted purple power to clean off the surface, right? So you want to start with the clean, because you don't want to grab your disc bag and grind that dirt right into there. That's not good. So you want to make sure you have to start with a clean surface. So another trick I came across, and be very careful with this, because it will take some decals off. You need to be careful. If they're clear coated, it's fine. But some of the older ones that just slap a sticker on it and said, I don't know, Schwinn or something, and you spray this on there, it's gonna wipe that right off, or some serial number stickers, so you gotta be careful. So I don't use, I used to use White Lightning, but that got kind of pricey. But for you, I would suggest using White Lightning, because you wanna be doing the volume, mass volume that I'm doing. White Lightning is a bicycle kind of like this here. It is able to get all the gunk off the stickers, or any kind of like rubbing that falls in the garage, hits the wall, and get that white paint or whatever onto the frame, and if for some reason doesn't want to come off, White Lightning worked really well to take those things off. Well, I use carb cleaner, cost effective, but it has a risk to it, be warned, because sometimes it'll take out of those particular areas. But I usually apply it on the rag first, like so, and then I clean that surface area where the stickiness is, old decals, what kind of thing that I don't want on there. Usually people throw stickers on it to kind of camouflage their bike, if it's a college bike or something like that. Or, I don't know, people like stickers, it's fine. My daughter's the same way. So this is a good way of getting that gunk off. And the other trick is I use a tire lever, not a steel one of these nylon guys. These nylon guys are really good to kind of scrape the frame with that particular cleaner or the purple power to get that gunk off. And since it's nylon, the less chances of it to scratch the frame and damage it. So these are a true little lifesaver to try to really dig and get that stuff off, because I've had some really bigger of a time to get those particular stickers off sometimes, especially if there's a lot of them. So cleaning the bike frame, big thing. Get a good clean surface before you start using these disc type rotor buffers and so forth. With the wheels, I use a shop sink to get into all these little crazy nick and crannies. These little boogers, I mean, you don't want to sit there and floss that. So I use like a dish soap firm bristle scrub brush with dish soap and hot water. And you could probably do this outside too if need be, just to get into all those little things to get it out. So when I put it in the touring stand to wipe it off and clean it, the gunk is out of those little crevices and so forth. And it makes a pretty wheel like this. And Armor All tires. Adam says make a tire cleaner too. Kind of on the fence on it. It gets kind of sticky in the sense that it gums up the actual bottle, so I had to reuse a different bottle and tighten it out every time I want to reuse it, because it'll plug up this end. Just to continue, but it does really shine the tires up. Be excellent for the cars too. You know, all this stuff is probably really good for the cars as well. So anywho, that's the prepping. Then on to the cleaning. So to really boogered areas, and you'll see, there's a video I just put out for fork detailing, had some chipped up clear coat, and there's another one out there. And this is what I use to kind of clean that flaky stuff off, but go really light on this. And for all the pre-sanding that I do, like with this, or the bathroom, sink scrubber type pad, all the way to the wool pad, I use their compound. The compound is that kind of a de-scratcher kind of material. So everything I'm put on there is not dry. It's a wet sand kind of perspective. And that being said, you got to be careful of, a question came out, it's like, how do you keep it from spraying everywhere? Well, for me, I go really light and polite. So while I'm using the very aggressive scrubber, I just put a dot in here of the cleaner or the compound, just a dot, and kind of spread it around with my finger to really get it embedded in here, and whatever's left on my glove, and I wipe that. I target the areas by by just rubbing those spots on where I'm working. And that way I can really kind of dig in there and reapply, and only use, this dries out, then I put another small dot, and that's the application process I've been using. And most of these I use are kind of a pad type things that actually absorbs a lot or holds that liquid really well. And then when I do this guy, same kind of thing. You put a couple dots on there and just kind of mush it in there. So less likely it's on the inside, then it rotates. While it's rotating, it's automatically pushing itself out, just spreading it out. So when I'm hitting the whole surface, it actually cleans those areas pretty well. So that's kind of the trick of keeping the splatter down. I still get a little overzealous, put a little too much on sometimes, and get a mouthful in the face. Not tasty stuff at all, but anywho, some of the stuff actually smells really good, but don't eat it. I'm pretty sure it's not, consumable whatsoever. But then once I go through the cleaning pads, which means I'm kind of smoothing the surface down and getting a good bedrock for the actual polisher, which is our polishing compound. And that's a two-step process I do. One is the actual pad applicator, and that same thing too. The foam itself absorbs a lot of that, the liquid. I just put a dot in the middle of it, and then it spreads out when I use it. And then I just reapply when it starts seeming, when it gets kind of like, it doesn't seem like it doesn't have much in it, I put another dot in there and do the same thing. And then that does the same thing. This is the only one I do dry. It's basically the polisher's already on there, then I use this, and it's still kind of wet anyway on the frame. So I use this buffing pad, and this one here actually kind of dries it off and kind of gets in those nicks and crannies and gives it a nice buffing to it, which is really nice. So that is pretty much the plethora of little pads that I use with the Dremel tool. Then I go with your fiber cloth at the end and wipe everything down. Because this, sometimes with this tool you can't get into those nicks and crannies, and that's where I kind of really get in there. And if you need to, for some of those areas, get a nice clean cloth and put a little bit of the compound or the polisher on that. Then you can get in those little areas that you just can't quite get the angle on, just to add that polisher to that and wipe it down and give it a good cleaning. So that's my tools. It sounds like a lot. It is a little bit of a process. But for the benefit for me and the person that's going to be purchasing this bike is not just getting a clean frame, which is really nice, clean, polished, buff, and also those the polisher too protects the frame, so from like any kind of contaminants and so forth while riding, it helps protect that clear coat, which is great. Other than that, when I do that, guess what? Each one of those each one of those processes I do, from either sanding with the 3000 grit to the wool pad to applying to polishing and also wiping off the frame at the end, I'm going over that frame in detail, looking for any kind of imperfections, damage, cracks, chips, scratches, you name it. So be rest assured, this frame has been gone over not just once, not just twice, maybe 6 or 7 times. Time I actually am done with the process, which enables me to make sure this frame is safe and really ready to go for the next step, that is putting the parts back onto it. So that's my tips and tricks with what I use in the shop for tools. So on this guy, doesn't have very many chips or so forth on there, and gonna do just the wool pad. And when I do the wool pad, and let me show you what I use. I'm just gonna put a couple dots on there, right? Not much, just enough. And here's the trick. You just get that stuff in there, because that's where you want it to work, from the center out, right? So let's do a little section, and there'll be a little after video showing the final results. So when this is applied, I put a little bit in there, and I basically go through different angles and rotations when I'm applying this. As you can see, there's some spray. It is actually just washed, so there still has some little bit of water on there, but it doesn't spray out as that much. Like so. And I start with the big tubes first when I first apply that compound or the polisher. That when I get to the corners and edges, the polish and the compound distributes to the end by then. Again, this one did spray because it was still a little damp from cleaning it. That's another gold nugget. You can wash these. I mean, I put them in the really hot water, and I don't use any soap or anything. I just use my fingers to really just re-energize it and rinse out all that gunk in there. It's probably advised to do it once or twice to have that done, kind of thing. So anywho, that's polishing. Check out the final results.